Hey there. So when I was growing up watching Star Trek The Next Generation, I used to think that the Wil Wheaton Wesley Crusher character thought it was the worst thing ever. I always felt sorry for Wil Wheaton too within that, because I always wondered how you shake that. It's not just having it on your resume as a child actor that's bad. It's going out and being that character because you grew up in that role. So shaking that role, it's going to be difficult. And Wil Wheaton, he has always tried to do that. I rooted for him at first to be able to do it too, as he would go out and tell some of the worst jokes possible, seem very socially awkward in doing so. I used to root for him doing that. And then, of course, like so many other people, within the last few years, he started showing exactly who he was. And well, I don't know a lot of people that root for him anymore. Basically, that Wesley Crusher character, it grew up, and it grew up into Wil Wheaton. Wil Wheaton, the way that he looks now, he became that role. That role, that cringiness, it's personified in his character. And it's pretty much exemplified in things like this. Now, these days, too, I think that this headline says a lot. When comicbook.com, its lead story right now is Star Trek's Wil Wheaton deactivating his Twitter account. That has become the new norm. I mean, can you think about that? Anytime that you want attention, you just stomp off like a child and say, I'm not doing that anymore. You do it really vocally, and of course somebody's going to pick it up. Depending on the level of the star there, you may even make it into the mainstream, and maybe that's what Wesley Crusher hoped. Maybe he could go out and he could actually gain relevance with doing something like this again, because really, when's the last time that Wil Wheaton was actually a relevant person? Now, looking at this headline, it actually leads to a story that is pretty entertaining, because you can look at his tantrum in 7 pieces, and I thought we would go through. Basically, he wants to go out and talk about Nazis and getting Nazis off Twitter. Now, what are Nazis? Well, basically, the people that want to kick everyone off, the people that want to dress in all black attire and hit you with bike locks. You would think they would be the Nazis, but no, in this day and age, centrists, those people are Nazis. Firefighters, according to Antifa, those people are Nazis. Policemen and on, those are the Nazis. Of course, for a Wil Wheaton, I'm sure that anyone out there that disagrees with him and he can't silence easily, anyone that goes out and either reflects the wrong political ideology or probably says, shut up, Wesley, I'm sure those people are all Nazis or fascists. So let's check this out. Part 1 again of 7. Us, please enforce your TOS and kick the Nazis off Twitter. Twitter, we hear you. Now, how about we force you to see people you don't want to see in your timeline instead? Won't that be great? Us, no. Twitter, rounded corner, look at them. Man, that's cringy. And look, he managed 3,000 likes. Basically there for an account his size. That's not really doing much of anything. Part 2 here. I've been here since the very beginning. Oh, kudos. Good for you, Wesley. Continuing. Tomorrow, I'm deactivating my Twitter. I invite you to join me for a day, a week, a month, whatever works for you, because you deserve better than the toxic, hateful, abusive environment @Jack has encouraged Twitter to become. Now, I find that really telling when you look at someone's name and they talk about mocking fascists, and yet they don't see themselves as part of the problem within this. No, they're the solution. They're bringing the solution. People like this, I've heard them talk about solutions in the past before. I wonder where I'm channeling that from. Anyway, continuing here, part 3. As I said yesterday, no judgment. If you're not into this effort, that's totally cool. Live your best life and spend time here if it makes you happy. It doesn't make me happy, and I feel that Twitter right now does more harm than good. Part 4 within this. Early on, people like me helped Twitter grow and flourish. I love, again, the ego to this. Early on, you know what I did? Well, people like myself, we grew this place. This is ours here. Basically, setting down down the rules for it. But continuing, I'm proud of that, and I don't regret it. But you always have that caveat. But Twitter has lost its way because it has terrible leadership that tolerates and encourages bigotry, abuse, harassment, and the deliberate spreading of misinformation. You know, it's really interesting to see how many accounts have been banned. And it's pretty much a reaction to Alex Jones not being banned. Not going to ban this guy? Well, screw it. I'm out of here. I'm going to stomp off because I'm mad. Part 5 here. I don't want to be part of what Twitter has become. I hope that if enough of us deactivate whoever is leading Twitter, it sure as hell isn't Jack, will take meaningful steps to address and curtail the abuse, misinformation, and harassment that are currently its primary use. Now, when you hear that kind of stuff, basically this is a harassment platform, it's amazing. You know, I go out, for example, and I look at comic books a lot. I talk about entertainment a lot. And you see the vitriol that comes out of people's mouths that are in lead positions there. I mean, you see this kind of stuff. Like I said, this account mocks fascists. So, I mean, really. But continuing, I am not under any false impressions about this effort. It probably won't make a difference at all. But that doesn't mean it isn't worth trying, and it doesn't mean that our lives won't be improving by removing this toxicity from our lives, even if it's just temporary. Now, what's interesting about a statement like this is the actual state of Twitter. I mean, when you look at their stock right now, this is when President Trump decided to call them out for shadow banning, and look at where they're sitting within the market. I mean, it's like they dropped off a freaking cliff. They have also been bleeding consumers. I mean, when you look at the numbers here, if you look at the headlines from July 27th, Twitter lost 1 million monthly active users in its second quarter alone there. I mean, you're talking about huge numbers in drop-offs. Also, on top of that, you have all of the purges that are going on, talking about 70 million accounts that were purged really at the beginning of July, and now you have another purge taking effect right now. So Twitter is in the middle of trying to overhaul everything it does. They are in damage control, and you wonder, is this relevant, or will something like this, it will fade into obscurity? But continuing here, as I said before, he gives 2 places here, and he gives his name within it. You know, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and of course on Tumblr. I'm still around if you care about that. I just won't be here. Thanks for listening, and be kind to each other. There's the end. Isn't that lovely there? Now, something else that is mentioned within this, and that I find kind of disturbing, is a Washington Post article that's mentioned that was supposed to placate individuals like Wheaton. Now, within this, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, he says that he's rethinking the core of how Twitter works. Now, some of the things that he mentions within this, I'm going to just read through. You know, he says in an interview with the Washington Post on Wednesday, Dorsey said he was experimenting with features that would promote alternative viewpoints in Twitter's timeline to address misinformation and reduce quote-unquote echo chambers. He also expressed openness to labeling bots, automated accounts that sometimes pose as human users, and redesigning key elements of the social network, including the like button and the way Twitter displays user follower counts. The most important thing that we can do is look at the incentives that we're building into our platform, because they do express a point of view of what we want people to do. And I don't think they are correct anymore. So basically, he's talking about going in and having labeling bots, automated accounts that sometimes pose as human users. He's talking about putting in corrective ways to address things like echo chambers, meaning that if you look at this and you look at some of the talk about it, he's basically going out and trying to remedy things before the next election so you don't get quote quote-unquote fake news. And of course, their version of quote-unquote fake news doesn't come from the mainstream media. It actually comes from alternative sources that discuss things that, of course, will never be covered in that. So I think it's kind of scary what they're talking about here. And of course, those moves, they never placate the people that really are out there wanting the teetotal silencing of anything that opposes them. And really, I think that that is probably a primary point within the Wil Wheaton story. So my final thoughts on this. I think it's interesting, again, when you go out and you think about the fact that anyone quitting Twitter these days has become a major lead story. You think about all of the people that have done this for exposure in some type or some way, and you really don't even know how long that's going to be. I mean, for myself, I wonder exactly how long Wil Wheaton can stay away. You know, when he's talking about that, and he's talking about turning it off, he's been there since 2007. Don't you think a guy, after that long is probably addicted to it? Also, when I'm looking at this, as I said before, I used to feel sorry for Wil Wheaton. I used to think, man, I hope that he can go out and he can become the very best person that, he can strive to be. I hope he can shake Wesley Crusher. And unfortunately, within that, he never did. He's still out there being as cringy as ever, acting, well, like Current Year. And you know how Current Year is when it talks about smashing the fash or opposing Nazis. Of course, it does so with rhetoric that tries to fuel the crazies out there, because the crazies, of course, those are the people that will act. But anyhow, tell me your thoughts on this. I'm curious exactly what you take within that. Also, within the description, if you like this kind of content and you would like to support the channel, there is a Patreon link, and also there is a tip jar. There are different ways to support the channel. All of it is definitely appreciated. These days, YouTube basically hates any kind of voice that's out there that doesn't follow lockstep with rhetoric. And well, what type of voice would you be if you did that? But anyhow, thank you.